everyone. Welcome to Truth Teller Tales. I'm Ellen, and I'm dedicated to interviewing those truth seekers who became truth tellers and all seem to have this unwavering faith during this most incredible time to be alive. And I feel like these folks are going to be studied for generations. Today, I'm interviewing somebody that I have admired for years. He has a legacy that he is building of such important work because he's a filmmaker and an unapologetic warrior. So I'm just thrilled and excited. And I know you're going to be just as excited to bring on Nick Alvear. Oh my, such an honor, Nick. Thank you for being on my show.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. It's awesome. Thanks for reaching out and inviting me. I love how you're approaching this, and I think what you're going to bring to a lot of people is the sense of humanity behind the people that they look up to. Because sometimes people need to be reminded, you know.
E- Exactly. And the people that do know who you are, once they hear your stories, they're like, oh my goodness, I love hearing more about who these people actually are. And it's just really important, and it's going to be important for years to come. That's going to also align with your work. So before I dive into your life and who you are, I just want to tell everybody your lane, and your lane is huge. Good Lion TV, which I've been a subscriber for a couple years, but and because you have a huge vast amount of videos, movies, documentaries, and you have other ones like Pervy Wood got me at first couple years ago, and I think you have the Red Pill Cinema 2.0 and all those other ones, and you've built this conglomerate in the most incredible, perfect timing, and it's going to be such a legacy. Just before we dive into your life as a kid, just tell me and the audience more about this thing that you've built.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for saying all that. By the way, Goodline.tv is the website I created in 3 days after YouTube deleted me on October 15th, 2021. Actually, it was 2020. And that was because of them claiming that I was bullying pedophiles. So the series I created, Pervywood, was the fifth film I created, and it blew up. The four films before that didn't scratch the surface really, but it was that got me on everybody's radar. And now there's 18 episodes of Pervywood. Some are 3 hours long, some are 30 minutes, but you can find them all on goodlion.tv, and you can find many online if you just type in Pervywood in a search bar. But yeah, goodlion.tv was the mission that I had to wake up the world, to red pill the world.
Yeah.
And if YouTube hadn't, in essence, fired me or deleted me, I probably wouldn't have created goodlion.tv. So it kind of shows how the things that are not first perceived as bad luck or misfortune really, you can't spell misfortune without a fortune. You can turn a lot of bad things into your blessings if you're hip enough to recognize the perspective shift is all that's needed. And that's really how I got through everything. Some people know I'm a January 6er. I was there on January 6th, made it to the rotunda. A guy filmed me who works for Tucker Carlson, or did, and he put it on his Twitter, and it got 8 million views. And everyone and their moms were tagging the FBI to make sure that I was going to get arrested, and I did. But in that same vein, I had the best time in jail. People don't think that's true, but making 65 movies in 5 years means you're not going to have much of a social life. So once I got to jail, I had a social life. It was like a slumber party with strangers that had something to share with me. So because I was at the peak of my podcast game around then, I just podcasted with everybody. Basically, I just asked them a million questions and learned about how they got there, like what we're doing here. So in essence, Good Lion was what I created and promoted once I got out of jail. And it's been doing way more than I ever thought it could. There's a lot of people I meet in Ubers, and they tell me they know my work, or just like I moved to Hawaii and there's people here seen that know my work. So it's cool. It's cool to see that I've reached a lot of people with my passion to wake people up.
I love that. And I want to dive into that more when we get closer to when you're an adult. Because I was J6 for two. I just wasn't as brave as you, and I only got to the lawn, but I went by myself. But
Wow,
the greatest show on earth that you did, one, two, and three. There's just so much. But so we'll talk more about that too. But I want to start with where you were born, what it was like as a kid, just kind of your life starting out.
cool. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela. My mom's Venezuelan. My dad's Chilean. I look like I'm white. People were always like tweeting that this white guy got off for smoking weed in the Capitol, but I'm far from white. Um, and I'm even 11% Nigerian, if you want to sprinkle that in there. My childhood started, I moved here to America when I was 1. It was my first birthday. And I grew up in California, so I've had that kind of beach life for most of my life. My mom is incredibly musically talented, and so is her side of the family. So her grandpa is musically gifted as well. And I'm like the only sibling who, of all of the 4 of us, who has that. So music was always my first love. I started making music probably like at 8. I taught myself how to play guitar and piano, and then at around like 13, I started producing music on a computer. And I still make music to this day. I actually score all the films that I make. And some in the beginning, like half of them were just all my band, Venus Looking Glass. You can find that on Spotify or Apple Music. And then eventually I started getting a little bit more creative in painting, scoring the films. But yeah, so music was my first love. And then film. I was like in 6th grade knowing I was going to grow up to be a film director.
You're
And
kidding.
no, not at all. Yeah. Um,
So in school, tell me about that. So okay, that's crazy in 6th grade that you already knew that. And so through those years, did you move around? Were you in the same place? Were you an athlete? Were you an artsy guy? Were you all of it?
we moved around a lot in the same city, and my mom let me like draw on the walls. She didn't give me much of a boundary when it came to creativity, so I think that really helped. I remember one time my dad left his Volkswagen bus behind on a day where he went to work, and my mom and my brothers, we just painted up the van, on the outside. He was pissed when he got home, but my mom taught us like it's okay to be creative. And I think that's what has helped me be comfortable being creative. Um, Spanish was my first language. So like I remember being in 4th grade having like an assistant tutor trying to help me speak English better. So like I didn't really start off communicating well, and I might have autism. So I might be on the spectrum somewhere, because now that I look back, I see all these symptoms of things that I kind of grew up with struggling. But I mean, I think it's a superpower. And once I learned how to tap into my superpowers, when things started to change. But I played baseball, I wrestled for a little bit. But in middle school, I was in the orchestra. I played viola, and we went around to other elementary schools and middle schools and played shows for them. And that was kind of a premonition into how I'd spend most of my post high school years. In my post high school years, I didn't go to college. I just played in a rock and roll band. We played at a lot of venues in LA. And I also simultaneously was embarking on becoming a monk. Like I studied Buddhism so much and Hinduism that I became like obsessed with meditation. And I would read every book there was out there on human psychology, Buddhist practices, because I felt inherently like the house I grew up in was very chaotic. My parents, their fighting was very chaotic. So as a young kid, for some reason, you think everything's your fault when that happens. And so I thought there was something incredibly wrong with me. And that's why I was going to Buddhism, to figure out like what these thought patterns that needed to be adjusted. And it did help. There was a time in my life when I was 21, I did a meditation that I learned from a book that said, don't do this alone. And that just challenged me to want to do it alone. And since I had been so strict with meditation, this thing happened. And after this thing happened, which I think is what they call a Kundalini awakening, I was a radically different person in the sense that people wondered what I did to become so calm and chill all of a sudden. Because before they could tell I was rooted in an anxious place. Like I would say things that made no sense in a conversation. But once I did this, things changed. And after a while, I realized, hey, you know what? Like I want to be a monk, but I'm noticing all my friends are graduating, getting their master's degrees, starting families. I want that more. And so I embarked on a journey to get a degree. I went to Santa Barbara City College. And that was so gorgeous. I lived out of my van. I walked around barefoot, did the Steve Jobs thing, and really enjoyed myself. I went there for film and psychology, and I realized maybe I'm not going to get a job that quick with this. So I'm going to go learn how computer network engineering, how that works. So how the internet works, which is insane. It's like such an alien technology. And so, yeah, like I got a great job after college, and I was working at a place for 3 years, which was like the longest time I've ever worked at a place. I'm very rebellious by nature, so I always get fired. I got fired from Apple, and then I got fired from this place and a few other places. But and that was because I was vocal about being a Trump supporter. And this friend of mine, this friend of mine, like she was a friend, but now she was like, "Oh, you like Trump?" So she managed to get heat on me in moments where I was frustrated and like where anyone else would be like, "Oh, I get it, you're frustrated." She decided to go to HR, and so the thing is, the day I lost my job when they fired me, it was the first day that Silicon Valley sent their employees home because of COVID. They said, "Well, just work from your home." And I thought, man, if I hadn't got fired and I just still was there, I would have had a dilemma. Like, am I going to take this shot that you're going to force me to? And I didn't get to face that dilemma because now I was like, what, Amir Habir Singh, this brilliant guy, he says, freedom of speech belongs to the unemployed because you can't get fired. You're unemployed. And you can say whatever.
Got nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. And then I had that mentality. I was like, oh my gosh, I got a daughter, a wife, and I'm a loser now because I don't have a job. And so in those nights, well, actually, there's a big chunk I didn't mention, but
I want you to mention that chunk, Nick. But first, before you do, I want to go back because what I have found, and even though your spirituality was more of the Buddhist and you needed that calm, I guess, because you had a chaotic childhood, you said, right? So, what I'm finding is people who are warriors like you have this increased spirituality. Some have this thing that happens like you had, or it's evolved. So tell me about that experience. And was it a knowing when you came out of it? Was it, because it's just so curious to me that you had that before all this other things that have happened in your life.
Yes. I'd say from the ages of like 14 to 24, this whole thing takes place. I was super depressed as a youngin because I had a terrible acne in middle school, and I was begging my mom to get me on Accutane. And the doctors all said, "Hey, man, you're probably gonna experience some depression, so just let us know if you do." I didn't let them know, but I'd cry every night, wishing I was dead. But my face cleared up, and so I think that set me on a stage where I had to figure that out too. I had to figure out like what the heck's going on with me, and so that's what motivated me to find answers. The first spirituality book I ever read was called The Dharma of Star Wars, and this guy compares Buddhist practices to everything that you see in the Star Wars movies, and that was written by I think Matthew Bordelin, and my first meditation teacher was a college professor named Kevin. And Kevin would do these Zazen Buddhist meditations of Japanese Buddhism at this place right around the corner from my house, a Buddhist temple. And I loved Kevin. He taught me the basics, just like the book did. And so I kind of had this moment where I realized when Kevin brought his brother in, I realized Kevin is Matthew Borderland's brother, the author of that book, The Download Star Wars. And I just thought, wow, what a small world that these brothers have influenced me in this way, and I had no idea. And that was the beginning. A lot of those synchronicities are like God, the universe telling me, hey, man, pay attention. I'm sending you something. And so there was one book that was called what is it? It's called Mind Science, a dialogue with the Dalai Lama, an East-West dialogue with the Dalai Lama. And in there, there are some Harvard scientists who are asking or going over a study they did with a Tummo meditation practitioner. Tummo meditation is Gtummo, that's how you spell it, and it's a Tibetan meditation where you see a lot of Tibetan monks show the power of this meditation by going out into like high elevation where there's a lot of snow, and they'll dip like a bed sheet into very cold water and they'll wrap it around them and they'll do the breathing technique, which is the meditation, and you'll see the steam start to come off these sheets, which eventually dry up because you're generating that much body heat. So in the book, they give you a step-by-step on how to do it, but they say don't do it because you need a mentor, someone who's done it before, who can guide you because it could be dangerous. And I thought, well, why could it be dangerous? I'm gonna try it. And I gave it my all. And because I was so obsessed with meditation, I was already working with a lot of stamina and momentum. So this was when I went. So the cool thing is this happened when I went back to Venezuela. I went to Venezuela when I was 10 and 19. And this happened when I was 19. I used to go behind where my uncle lived and do a couple like laps around the soccer field, pick up rocks and use them as weights. But there was a day where these guys were playing soccer and I didn't want to get in that area. So I sat on this little hill and waited for them to finish. But that's when I thought, all right, I'm gonna do that meditation right now. And in the process of doing it, and I'll just summarize it very quickly. At first you envision that you're one of these Hindu gods or goddesses. I think it's figure as a god that has like 10 heads, 10 arms, 10 legs. And the reason why is because if you imagine you have 10 heads and 10 arms, 10 legs, you're going to be more sensitive to your senses, to your feelings of your arms and your legs. So what it's doing is getting you in your body and out of your mental space. From that point onward, you then envision you're just a pillar with a fan at each section of your body. And every time you breathe in, you envision this pyramid of, watch, now someone's going to put a freeze frame on that and think I'm Illuminati. There's a pyramid where you envision it super red hot, white hot, with an Om on it. And when it reaches the bottom of the pillar, which is when you take your full breath in, a little fire starts. And then with every breath that you see that same repetition, more of the fire grows. And so I was probably doing this over and over until the pillar would catch on fire and you keep going. And I remember I got to about my neck and I thought, oh my God, this was the first time I actually like stopped focusing on what I was doing and noticed my body, and my whole body from neck down was numb. And I was like, whoa, I think it's working. And I was like 19, so I was very young. And I thought, don't comment, just keep going forward. The whole purpose was I wanted to find enlightenment, so this is what a lot of Buddhists are seeking. And it got to a point where as I kept going from here upward, I don't remember what happened. Like, I don't remember how long I was gone, but what I do remember was all of a sudden I'm in this ball of golden energy. And my eyes were closed, but there was so much gold. And the thoughts that came to my head, there were 3 or 4 thoughts that came into my head. First one was, is this enlightenment? And the second thought was, maybe I'm not ready for this. And then the third thought was, all right, let's just open my eyes and I can do this again later. I can just do this again later, which I haven't. Like 10 years later, way more than that, 15 years. But I opened my eyes and they're like this. I kid you not. They were like spinning, like I had just been on a merry-go-round. And I had to like slow down for everything to just get restful. And my whole shirt was drenched in sweat. And everything I was looking at, and I'd done psychedelics before, it felt like I was almost like on an acid trip without the imagery. It was just like everything I looked at was like the first time I've seen it and the millionth time I've seen it at the same time. Yeah, it was awesome. And I remember coming back to my cousin and being like, look, man, I didn't run. And he's like, mentiroso. I'm like, I did not run. Like, this is for meditation. And so when I got back home, I actually used to be embarrassed to tell people that story. I have no idea why I was embarrassed. I just felt like people wouldn't understand. But as I got older, I don't mind sharing it because it shows that there is some strength and transformative power to meditation and prayer too. And so I
Yes.
remember people noticed, they were like, hey man, what'd you do? Like, you're really chill now and not annoying anymore. And I just told them I was meditating. But that's the one thing that happened that changed my life. And then just before I started making movies, I did drive home in an accident where I drove home drunk, which I'd never done at that time. I remember getting into my car thinking, what are you doing? And I went down to PCH, maybe it was 2:30 a.m. And I was driving a Prius at the time. You'll never catch me in a Prius these days. That's not, I mean, it was a long time ago. I even have a tattoo of the Prius. So like
Oh my word.
banged up on the sides because I ended up hitting the guardrail on the left side, and then I don't remember any of this, and swerving and hitting the guardrail on the right side. The only two things I remember are seeing the left rear, the rear view mirror, like with a spider web crack effect, like it hit something. And then I remember seeing the Prius battery was purple, which meant I had been there for a while. And no cops came. Nobody was injured. Nobody was hurt. And I just woke up. Ouch. I don't remember driving it back. And for me, as a truth seeker, this is something I'm uncertain of, but I feel like some divine intervention happened that night because I woke up on the couch and my ex-wife said, hey, you totaled the car. I said, what? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, where is it? She's like, well, you parked it out front. I go downstairs, I see it. I'm like, how? And I tried taking it to the back of the house, and it was like impossible to turn because the axle was broken. So I was like, how did I do this? Did someone else do this? And so I looked at the car. I noticed the guardrails paint was like the silverness of it was there, and then tall grass on the bottom of the car, which told me I can find where I crashed. I'm going to find it and get more answers. And so the company I worked for at that time had a shuttle that would pick people up from Ventura, take them to Santa Barbara, Carpinteria actually. And I took the shuttle, and I remember there was an accident, so we were going really slow. And I was like, great, I'm going to find it. And I found it. And I found that the guardrail had green paint on it, which was the green Prius, and it had tall grass underneath. So I had a moment of a real shock of like, whoa, I could have died, because I realized that the Prius hit the guardrail just when the guardrail started to begin. So like less than 4 feet, I would have flown off PCH. And in that moment, I was like, oh, two things came to my mind. My daughter would not have had me around, and I wouldn't have done what I knew I was going to do as a kid, make music and movies. And so that week, I LLC'd Good Lion Films, and thinking I was just going to create a music video company and real estate. And one of our first real estate clients, we went to a bar in Santa Barbara. Before I even had a name for this company, I just knew I was going to create a company. We had our first meeting at the Good Lion in Santa Barbara on State Street. And I excused myself to use the restroom. I said, hey, man, I'm going to use the restroom. In the bathroom, they got a typewriter right in front of the guys when they're peeing. So they're looking at a typewriter. And in there is Ernest Hemingway's half-written short novel poem called The Good Lion.
Of
And it's about,
course.
I know, it's about a lion with wings like this right here. Yeah. And so, yeah, right? I know. I got a
I
UFO.
love it.
Yeah.
Oh,
So like the cool thing is that the reason why it struck home for me is because I had written in college while living out of my van a screenplay about this pterodactyl who had these beautiful golden wings that he didn't know how to use. So people would make fun of him. All these other animals at like this orphanage type where all different animals are saved and live together. And it's a cool story. I won't go into that at all, really, but it reminded me so much about The Good Lion because I believe there is
mhm.
some similarities to that. And I came out of the bathroom and I told my friend, hey, Good Lion Films, that's what we're going to be. And that's where it started. Yeah.
I, I love that already so much. And this is what I love too, Nick, is that just talking about it, you start to see the story of Nick, the book of Nick, and that is written and is and is at the time as random and weird and the events that happened that are unfortunate, it had to happen, you know?
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. Like I'd go on these retreats during that time before all this, just to learn more meditation. And some of them were 10-day meditation retreats that are like very strict Vipassana meditation retreats. I've done 6 of those now, or 6 or 7. Um, those are very militant because you can't look at anybody for these 10 days. You can't speak to anybody, and they give you like, if you really excel, you do like 8 hours a day of meditation. If you want to slack off a little bit and not be too serious, you do 3 hours. But it taught me how to be okay with a situation in any kind of event. So when I got locked up for January 6th, I remember the minute they slammed the cell, I thought to myself, okay, I'm on a Vipassana meditation retreat. I'm turning this into something good for me. Every minute I'm in here, I'm going to practice meditation. So when I wasn't practicing meditation, I was making friends. And well, friends. Yeah, I guess they were friends in the moment because
Right.
I guess everyone is. But yeah, so that's what helped me get through jail. I mean, I wasn't there for too long. 45 days, I think, is long, but when
Yeah,
compared to other
long.
people, yeah, it was crazy. Jail was
Well,
crazy, but it
I
grew
want to
me
hear
up.
more about I want to hear more about that, but I feel like I want to go back.
Uh-huh.
So because everything is a mental game, I think, and the psychology and the psyops with which we're living, it's all such a mental thing that we're going through in this awakening period. And so back when you were just feeling like you had to uh work in society and you worked in Apple and a couple other places and you lost your job, so I'm sure you weren't the only one that supported Trump, but somehow you felt like you could were vocal about it, I guess, obviously enough that people knew about it, as opposed to not being afraid to just not say anything. So what in you at that time you just thought it was okay? Was it you didn't care? Was it naivety? Because for me, for a while, it was naivety because I didn't understand why people would be so judgmental of it. What was it back then, do you think?
I think it was a mixture of a few things. One being, at this point, I just finished the computer network engineering program, and I was obsessed with Bernie Sanders. And I just got a
Mm,
job somewhere where this guy Marty Lemon, who I still credit to this day for waking me up, for being my red pill in a sense. I had a few red pill moments prior, but this guy was like, he was a Trumper. I didn't know. And he saw an action figure of Bernie Sanders that I had, and he was just so nice in his way of approaching me about like, so what is it about Bernie? And I would tell him, and he's like, did you ever listen to Trump or anything? Like, I was like, no, I hate Trump. I remember saying like when we votes for him, I'm falling for the whole brainwash, and but I was open minded. So he planted a seed, and I thought to myself, you know what? I want to watch a Trump speech. Because at that time, the job was so easy. I went through all this school just to have this job where I sat around and monitored these networks that they were doing the job. Like I would relay a message every week, one. So I watched a lot of red pill documentaries. This was kind of like the job that set me up. And I remember watching Trump's RNC acceptance speech when he won the RNC. And in that moment, I was like, "Oh my God!" I compare it to like if someone realized they liked guys, like a dude realized he liked guys. Like that's what I would imagine it was like, because all of a sudden I felt like Trump was more of my identity, but I had no idea how to tell people because I knew they were going to judge me right away. So it was like I was like a closet Trump supporter for a while. And a lot of people were. And then sometimes you meet somebody and you find out they love Trump too. And you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. It's kind of like finding out teachers that smoke weed after high school. So in that moment, it grew the more and more people I was confident enough to say something about Trump or Q. And they would say, oh, I know. And so I started realizing, like, wait, how many people actually think like this and just afraid to say it? So when I got this job at a place called Procore, they make an app for construction jobs, big ones. Everyone can do construction on one app as opposed to the old school way of throwing papers around. But it was there that I started to embrace it because I was IT. I would go and meet everybody, and we would, talk and learn about each other. And I started to embrace it, and I made friends there who were of that nature. And so, once I realized, like, when people knew I was a Trump supporter and they wanted to debate, I would come with the most rational approaches, but these people, like my brother, for example, a liberal, they get so riled up and they get very angry. And then I'm like, how do I knock sense into you if your reaction to truth is to belittle me or to be angry? So then I thought, when I saw Fall of the Cabal, and this was when I was on unemployment, I thought, that's the way. I could do this better. I can make this look like a team made it and make it bigger than it is, so that people will listen to it more than they would. And so, because I thought Fall of the Cabal was great, but some liberals or normies would probably think, oh, this is just blah, blah, blah. This isn't this is just an independent journalist, which, by the way, I love Fall of the Cabal. Rest in peace to Janet.
I know.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. And then that's also the nature of what happens when people spend their lives researching the darkness and then making movies about it. It's almost like an energy, and it sticks. And if you don't have a way to get rid of that sticky energy, then it could and can consume you, like Isaac Cappy talked about. He literally said that same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it's so true. And I think too, Nick, that's why I want to go talk about a bunch more, but to that point, what you just said, I've obviously dug into that stuff. A lot of truthers have, not to the extent that you've had to research it to produce these films, but I do feel like that in order to look at these and still understand that there's a bigger, greater good, you've got to have that armor to me, an armor of God around me, so that it, it, it to understand that as bad as it gets, there is that greater good. And obviously, with your experiences, innately, you know that, because in order for you to survive that darkness that you've done so many documentaries about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the more you tune into the force of good, and some people could call it the force, use the force, Luke. You get to see it echo back to you. So like before I got in that car accident, I went on maybe a 3-year kick of Tony Robbins. and realizing like, well, this is what I want to be. What's in the way of me getting there? So I went to a UPW, which is a huge event in like a stadium, Unleash the Power Within, and you go over exercises that help you realize what it is you really want out of your life and what it is that's stopping you. How are you getting in the way? And after that, I was like on fire, and I would tell people. It's funny because you walk on fire at the end, but I would tell people I'm going to be a really great movie director. People are going to know my name, and I'm going to leave a mark in on this world with music and film. And I was so like confident about it that some people were like, "Dude, you're crazy. I don't believe you." And some people were like, "For some reason, I believe you," and they would stick around. And so like I started making independent movies, short films. But first, I would invite people over to a barbecue at my house, and if they showed up, then I realized that they would show up for another thing, like making a movie. And so that's how I built my first team and had a blast. And I was making those movies at the end of 2019. So then I got fired around March 12th ish of 2021. And the motivation I had to make movies transitioned into documentaries when I saw Fall of the Cabal, and when I was simultaneously frustrated that people wouldn't take information calmly if we were face to face. But if I made a
Yeah.
movie, I wouldn't have to deal with it. I could just show them the
Yeah.
movie, and it would do its thing or not, and they would have a better success rate. So that's what got me to make movies in the beginning, documentaries. I never thought I was going to make documentaries. I did a documentary film class in college only because the production class was full. And I was like, damn, this sucks. That's crazy.
But that's what I love, Nick, because the range of the things in your portfolio under goodline.tv, it's extraordinary. I mean, you have things that are just straight documentaries, that things um, that have a different flavor. The greatest the greatest story on earth. I'm getting it right, right? I mean, the
Greatest show on
three-part
earth.
one.
Greatest
Am
show
I
on
saying it
earth.
right? The greatest
Yeah.
show on earth, sorry. So
Mhm.
that one has music that everybody loves and could relate to. That the very first one is the one I thought, okay, this is the one. I didn't even think that my some of my family could handle Fall the Cabal. But that one, the first one, I thought, okay, I think they could handle this,
I,
watching it because of the way you did it. And it's just your things are just so I feel like I can show them to people, even whether it's Tartary or whatever it is. It's just an amazing portfolio of epic work at the most incredible time. And I have to tell you this. I don't do anything that you do, but I do have a degree in radio and television. I broadcasted. I have remember the Screen Actors Guild, and I was a vocal coach for 25 years. So I'm not an I'm not somebody that's oohing and eyeing who hasn't. I admire you so much because it's the perfect time and it's an incredible portfolio. So I just have to get that out again because it comes from my heart. I have to say that.
think
And so with that being said, I want to go back because so when so January 6th, I know, of course, 2021, it wasn't as hard for me to get there because I live in Virginia. So obviously it was hard for you to get there. And so where were you in the process of being a filmmaker during that time? You touched on it, but I want to hear that again because just trying to put the puzzle pieces together of the time frame for you.
cool. Good question. So 2020 is when I get fired. It's March. I make my first film, release it at the end of April, which was called Swamp: The History of Elite Child Sex Trafficking. When I decided I
Hmm.
wanted to make these, I was like all over Twitter, and then I saw that people made threads. And I thought that's a good way to start a script. Use someone's thread. They
Yeah.
have a thing, get your attention, they give you a piece of media. Let's just add those all together. And I found one that was written by this guy, and I was like, "Hey, man, can I use this? The history of a child elite child sex trafficking? He said, yeah, just don't use my name when you market it. I was like, well, who are you? And I looked him up, Larry Sanger, who co-created Wikipedia. Now, I'm not marketing it now, and this was years ago, so I don't think he's going to have an issue. But I'm just letting you know that it was, for me, I was like, whoa, you're talking about this? Like, everyone's talking about this. And then right when I finished the movie, what's that movie? There was a very popular movie that came out Out of Shadows.
Yes.
And that's how I promoted my film. I'd comment my film, I would say this is like a shorter version on every post that was referencing that. And that's how it began. I made 4 films, and then the 5th one, I had someone say, hey, you should write your own. Don't do anybody else's threads. You have a voice. What's like burning in you? And I thought, well, those who yell the loudest have the most to hide. All these people talking smack about Trump, they have so many skeletons in their closet. And I thought, oh, let's do that. Let's make a Pervywood. And that's where Pervywood began. And that's usually what it is. It's usually highlighting someone who hates Trump with like a TDS kind of flair. And it's Trump syndrome for anybody who doesn't know. And,
yes.
and it highlights how they're projecting. And so that's how Pervywood blew up. That was the first one that blew up for me. So it was great advice. It got like 500,000 views in a couple days. And I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy. I think I found my calling. And then I decided to start a podcast. And so I would have people on. Things were great. I was doing both, very active. And then we had a guy on named Bob Wiegand earlier on in the stages of all this, who claimed to be this George Bush protector, part of the 300, very vague, gave a lot of people headaches, but I wanted to understand what was going on. And so around the summer, I was having troubles with my marriage, and I was like, I need a vacation. So I brought my friend to go visit this guy, Bob, so we could help him make his book into an audiobook. I find out while I'm there with my friend that this guy's a pedo, a pedophile. And not only just the crazy rude things he would say to me, like he wanted to F me. I'm like, dude, what? I'm in a Twilight Zone episode now. There was some supernatural things that happened on the first night I was trying to sleep. He had a lanai, and I remember him doing it could have been him being on drugs, or he could have been trying to do some witchcraft. He was just mumbling nothing with his feet in the pool. And I was like, I can hear him. This is freaky. Don't fall asleep. And I had the sleep paralysis thing where your mind's awake, but your body's asleep. And I saw these black orbs hovering over me. And then this like guardian, like angel came and protected me, and I fell asleep. And then we started to connect the dots with his children and everything. Like, it became a very traumatic experience. And that's what set me on the road, because when I came home, my wife at the time, she's like, it's either you choose movies or you live here, but you can't make movies if you live here with us. And I just knew instinctively, like, I'm not going to stop making movies right now. There's no way. So I started living in a ton of Airbnbs. I'd go from a hotel to an Airbnb. And the last one I was in before January 6th was in Reseda, where gyms were outdoors now because it's COVID style. And I remember working out at a gym, and I saw Fabio working out next to me. At first, I thought it was a hot chick from like 50 feet away, but then he comes up with his beautiful hair, and it's Fabio. But at that house that I stayed at, that was when I decided, okay, I either go to this potentially final rally that Trump's ever going to have, or go with this hot chick and make a movie in the Amazon for her, because she's doing this. She wanted to make a documentary. And I chose Trump. And so I went to Virginia, got a hotel there, or an Airbnb there. And from there, made my way January 5th, hung out, got an idea of the place, very dark feelings there, passed out a bunch of weed, did a bunch of interviews. And then January 6th, then that happened. And so most people think that because I got off easy, that I must be an informant. But the magic of my situation is that I'm a filmmaker. And I brought a camera with me, which was my phone. which works great. And I knew the moment I saw everyone going up, I was like, I have to go up. I have to go up. I have to film this entire thing. And the one friend I was with, I was like, dude, I'm going. Like, if you want to make it with me, let's go. And so I'd go like 100 yards, look back. He's kind of out in the distance. And then eventually I lost him. But I filmed everything, showed my face as well. And it was because of that 2 felonies and 4 misdemeanors were wiped out. And they gave me a misdemeanor plea deal, which was parading in a Capitol building. I guess you're not allowed to do that. They didn't even touch the weed thing. So I pled guilty and I got probation for 3 years, which is because I had nothing on my track record. I had never been arrested before. It was that's just how they treat you in the system. If I had a
Yeah.
previous speeding ticket, they would have looked at that and been like,
Oh.
okay, it's time to get you in trouble now. So yeah.
But because of that, you still spent 45 days, which is crazy.
Yeah, because they really wanted to punish us. And so what happened was
Yeah.
I get into the jail, they immediately say I'm a flight risk and they should keep me here. But my friend, who was a fan at first, Sarah, she said, hey, I know what they're doing. They're going to keep you in there for a while. Make me your power of attorney because they did this to my husband when he got locked up. And I can make sure that they fly you to Washington, D.C. or drive you. And you speak to the judge in the jurisdiction where you violated the law. Because in where I was in Virginia, that judge did not have a say in the punishment for me. And they were just everyone was learning how to handle this. DC was like, we're not going to transfer these cases outside of our state. Our DC is going to have the authority on everybody, on what happens to them. So everybody got flown there. And if they couldn't, they did a Zoom and they would stay in the jail in their state. But there were J6ers on Con Air getting flown from Oregon, California. And I know this because we would be in the same jails at some points. Because after my friend Sarah did that, I got moved from the jail I was in for the first 30 days, which was probably the most transformative. I made a lot of cool connections there, learned how smart a lot of inmates are. Most of them are red pilled. You have a
Wow.
lot of open-minded people who know. And like I was crying when I left that jail, not like a baby, but like when I like turned around and I knew that I was not going to see them again, I did get teary. And I thought, man, this
Mm-hmm.
is crazy. But I went through
Yeah.
4 jails. I got to tour 4 different jails, and the last one was DC, and I got to do the solitary confinement for a week and a half.
Oh,
And
dang.
yeah, and then that was like the end of my run. They let me out because the judge got to redecide how to handle my situation. And thankfully, I had one fan who fit the criteria of how they would give me bond, and she took me in. She took me in, and if she hadn't, I probably would have stayed in jail for probably a while.
Wow. And so after that, um, then what was the process of you journeying back home and then starting back with making your films again? How long of a process did it motivate you more? Did it make you not want to do it? What happened after that?
It made me more motivated to make movies, and I also got to realize how sloppy the whole system was because they said, all right, you're gonna fly back to California. You have to speak to your probation officer when you land, so they will be waiting for you. Call them when you get there. And so I remember calling, and I was at the airport. I'm like, I'm just telling you, they told me to call this number, and they're like, we don't know anything about you. And I was like, it's funny. So I went to the lady's house, and then they called me a few days later. So I don't have an ankle monitor on. I could have ran away if I wanted to another country at this moment. But then a probation officer comes over, puts an ankle monitor on me. I have an ankle monitor on for a year and a half. I was at the peak of like public events, going to a lot of events. So when I would fly somewhere, I was put on the blacklist. So I would have to get places 3 hours early because when you first get there to check in, you can't do online check-ins. You got to let them know, and then they see you on the list. They have to call these bomb inspectors to come out, which takes time. Then they got to check all your stuff before you even go through TSA. And then that's done. They take you to the front of the line of TSA, which is kind of cool because people think you're a celebrity. And then you like you do that right away. And then when you get to your terminal, they're there waiting for you again. And so before you hop on the plane, they're doing the same thing 3 times. Like that's a fiasco. Yeah, insane.
Yeah. And so when you did all that, so then how did you get back in the frame of mind of where did you decide where you were going to take it from there? Were you in the middle of something then and had to get back to it, or did you just take a different a different angle with your films and your documentaries after that?
I went hard on the angle of the documentaries, but during podcasts, I didn't say so much because that's what got me in trouble. I said too much during podcasts. Well, it didn't get me in trouble. It just helped them try and get me into more trouble. So
Yeah.
I was writing Purveywood 9, Volume 1 when I got arrested. And that was showing all of the um, it was all of the evidence that showed that the 2020 election was rigged. It had all the poll workers coming forward in a Congress like setting, and it was hours for a week. Hours for a week. You would see different types of people saying showing what they experienced. And so I was writing that. And when I got out, one of the biggest things I was bothered by is that my parents didn't ever watch anything I made because they hate Trump. And so I made Purveywood Volume 1 specifically for my mom because my mom's from Venezuela, like me. And Venezuela is like the quintessential election rigging with Dominion voting machines example. And then seeing how their economy collapsed. And it was very much a mirror to what Hillary Clinton would have created in America if she had won. But so the angle of that first movie was specifically on that tip. And then the second one, Volume 2, was made specifically for my dad. Bringing in the New World Order, how it came to be, Hillary Clinton cherishing Henry Kissinger Henry Kissinger and Nixon creating the plan that eventually took over Chile, where my dad's from. In 1973, on September 11th, they bombed their White House and forcefully took over in a coup because they were afraid of the communism. And my dad was, I think, 12, maybe 8. He had to flee to Colombia. Yeah, he was 12. And then they had to burn all their communist books and stuff because his dad was communist. And so I was hoping that because I touched on those things, they would watch them, but they never watched those movies. But they're still good movies. So that's Purveywood 9, Volume 1 and 2. Yeah. And so
So that was my next question, Nick, is did they watch it and where are they today with everything that you've done and
they got
everything?
vaccinated. They didn't really listen to me when I told them not to. They've watched my Tartaria films because I told them, don't worry, there's nothing about Trump in there. My mom started to work for me and she was like turning The Greatest Show on Earth 1 into Spanish. And so my dad was like offended because she was working for me now and like she changed sides. Just because she's working with me doesn't mean she supports Trump. But she did mention a few times, she's like, a lot of the times you show Trump in your movies, he's really smart. It's like, yeah, I know. I'm doing what people should do. The media is only showing you edited things to make them look really bad. Like
Right.
this. And so for her to say that was big. And even if she did like Trump, I don't think she's got the courage right now in her
Yeah.
life to stand out like that. But yeah, they don't even call me. Like my parents are kind of out of my life. And I don't call them. And I'm okay with that sometimes because it is a lonely road doing what a lot of us do. Because I'm not the
Yeah.
only story like that. Like whether I'm an
Right.
influencer, filmmaker, or if someone else is not those and they're just consuming content, they share the same experience. A lot of our family members have like freaked out on us and think we're like some kind of plague. It's crazy.
Yes. It is crazy. So do you think if let's say this all it comes out in an overt fashion, and this there is an awakening, and there's no way it's undeniable as to maybe what's been going on. Do you hold that you'll be able to at some point come together with your folks, that they'll, if they indeed see have to see what's been happening in a wonderful way, and you've had it right all along?
Oh, that'd be freaking awesome. I mean, I do think there is going to be some kind of moment where that might happen. And we've hung out since. I've gone over. I've even had debates with my dad, and I'm like, "What? Like, I'm trying to understand you." Um, but when it comes to all that stuff, I do think there's going to be a time where they go, "Dang, we called you stupid, but you were calling out things ahead of their time." Like so. Yeah, it could be a disclosure that comes out when the time is right, or just it could be 10, 20 years down the line when some things get made
Right.
unclassified. Like yeah, which is fine by me. Like
And so,
I'll wait till we're ready.
yeah, I agreed. And I think it is divine timing, right? And I think things are going to happen when it's supposed to happen, individually and in the bigger bubble of life, right? With what's going on. But and so I just want to start to end with this. So obviously, everything that you've mentioned, because you felt like in your car accident, obviously something had to have happened, that your car was undrivable. Somehow you got home. And then when you were in that weird environment and you felt something weird, but then you felt the angel arms around you, your faith and your spirituality, whatever that is, has to have been growing through this whole process. Do you feel like it has been growing through this whole process, or is it just something you've become more aware of, or is that part of it growing through this whole process?
I think I had goals as a young kid to save humanity, and I didn't really know why back then. But I was like obsessed with that concept, and that helped me through the meditation. My grandma was Catholic. Um, Jesus was always mentioned in my family because of my grandma. So Christianity eventually became an interest of mine, but I wanted to see how they distorted it also. But
Mhm.
this whole process, I think, because I made the claim and desire for a specific outcome in my life, I think God was like, "All right, man, is that really what you want? I'm gonna put you through some boot camp, man, and see how it works out." And so, like,
Mhm.
I would compare the last 5 years, maybe, yeah, 5 years to a boot camp of, hey, your mom was very controlling and kept you attached to the family for far too long. You want to grow up, you want to be this, that, and everything. You're going to have to learn some serious lessons in 4 years. And the last 4 years, I learned some serious lessons, went through a lot of heartache, went through a lot of great success, influential stuff, very cool, upside down world for me. Um, but with it, all the lessons that come with it. So over the last year, I think I've been recharging my batteries. I've made a few movies, but I've been recharging. I moved to Hawaii, and I love how I'm living here. I've lived in some beautiful spots already. I've been here 7 months, but I
Oh,
found a
wow.
really yeah, it's been awesome. I think I found like the most beautiful chick on the planet here, and I remember when I
Oh,
first
yeah.
met her. Thanks. I remember when I first met her, I was just like, "What? Who is this woman?" But she just moved in with a guy, and I was like, "I guess this is never going to happen." And but I didn't know that they were going through just the worst time ever. And when I found out they broke up, I invited her skydiving, and that was our first date.
Wow.
Right, 17,000 feet. It was crazy.
Wow. Well,
I
if
know.
she's willing to do, if she was willing to go for that, and then she's probably a good one, because most women probably wouldn't have. So, I mean, good for you. Well, I'm so happy. So I'm just so happy that this journey that you've taken, and every, part that you've shared is just, they do say our lives are um, a play, and there has to be all those moments, and you have to go through all those things. But the fact that you had this in sixth grade, this knowledge that this is what you're going to be doing back then
Yeah.
is just so cool.
Uh,
Even with all the different roads that you had to take to settle in. But here's what's the coolest, I think, Nick, is you ended up doing it at the most incredible time in history. And so you saw Fall of the Cabal, but you're impacting more people, including little me in Virginia, in the a most incredible time. And that's the beauty of this journey that we're on. And I just can't thank you enough. And I'm just so cool to hear that journey. And so now that you're in Hawaii and you're feeling enjoying life, and which you should be, what do you feel like is motivating you in the future to put together more films and documentaries?
what's motivating me is not what motivated me in the beginning. In the beginning, I was so like, this is insane. The government's trying to take over. We have to wake people up before this happens. I don't feel that so much anymore. I feel like we do have a leg up. Things are looking like we are better suited in the outcome of favorable things we want to see. Um, so once Trump won this election, I was like, okay, I'm going to take a breather. And then I spoke to someone recently. He's like, well, basically saying like, I hope your breather is over because this is where we really need to focus. And I thought, oh, you're right. And so over the last year, I've been kind of struggling with identifying where the motivation is to do the next thing because 65 films of the same um, kind, so to speak, eventually to create them, I think like, well, how do I do this one different? Because that's usually what I want to do is make each film different. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm looking to, well, you'll see. I am bringing the video AI world into the conspiracy realm. And so, like, what's cool about the video AI is like you can create believable situations of conspiracies that now look like they were filmed. And you can go, oh, so
Right.
that's how it looked like, the Las Vegas shooting, that theory they've all brought up. I mean, I can see it. Or like the 9/11 story behind Larry Silverstein. And
Mhm.
so there are some cool things in the works where I'm now collaborating with really talented people that I think is going to completely change. It's going to completely change the game of the conspiracy film documentary arena, where now it's being told in a narrative fashion, where
Mhm.
it becomes more believable because there's elements of animation and comedy that initially tear down people's walls when they don't want to believe something because of cognitive dissonance. So
Right.
the future right now is multi-layered. There's going to be more conspiracy films utilizing AI to better tell the story, and then also Good Lion Studios becoming a larger entity in that we develop feature films that aren't documentaries, but that are things that the sixth grader in me wanted to make. Things that kind of do tie into conspiracies, but aren't 100% focused on them. So
Oh,
that's where
excellent.
yeah.
Well, I love hearing that, and I can't wait
Mhm.
for sure. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time out to be on my little show. And I know the people that watch are grateful too. And I just can't wait to share this in your story. And we've got a lot more coming up too. I've got a lot more cool people coming on the show. But for today, Nick, thank you for just
Yeah.
taking the time. It just means the world to me and everybody else who has found such enjoyment and eye-opening things during the greatest time of exposure. And you were really one of the main people in helping with that. So thank you. And it was a pleasure and an honor having you on this show. Nick, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, it was great. Thank you. And thank everybody for being here. And I'll see you all next time with another interview. Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much.
Mhm.